85% of people want to make a social impact on things which are happening around them. But most don't know how to do that. Most don't know where to start from.
Right.
One doesn't have to become a social entrepreneur, quote unquote, become a social entrepreneur, leave one's job and get in. There's something which each person can do, given the resource they have,
Right.
Given what they know, given what they, given people they know, or the networks which they have, which they can use to create a change in the lives of people around them.
And that's interesting, because earlier you said the second principle of social entrepreneurship is to create a flow from a place where the resource exists to a place where the resource doesn't exist. So in this way, that's where the self part comes in, because each self is also a resource. So it's allowing that flow to happen.
So anybody who's putting up a business becomes an entrepreneur, which is not what entrepreneurship is. If you look at where the term started from, which is long time back, by a guy called Jean-Baptiste Say, then Joseph Schumpeter, who was an American economist. Essentially, they've talked about two basic principles. Well, one, of course, they say they create social value. That's the thing. But how they create is one, and that's the principle. One is they identify a gap or an unmet need in the market, in the society, and create a innovative solution to bridge it. It's not as if that need was not being met. That need would be met, was perhaps being met in a more inefficient or not in the perfect way. Right. So they create an innovative solution for that.
Right.
An example I can give you, for example, the whole concept of microcredit with Grameen Bank started. So it's not as if poor were not getting credit, but they were getting credit from the local sahukar, local money lender, who would charge them exorbitant interest. And
I'm sorry. Could you say that sentence again? I'm so sorry.
Charge them exorbitant interest, or would have conditions about where they can or cannot sell whatever they are producing or services which they are offering, etc., etc. So what Grameen Bank or microcredit did was to create a more innovative solution which was more equitable for them, and therefore could bring them out of. So that's one principle. The second is, and which is very important, is that entrepreneurship essentially is taking resources which are not being utilized or underutilized in a system or in a society and putting them at a place where they would have greater value or have greater productivity. So just to give you an example, and this was a wonderful, I think still exists. There was this girl in Bombay who used to travel by the local metro and found, what happens in any local metro, etc., is that there are these people who come and sing and they beg. And some of them are amazing singers and they know how to, play the guitar or the various instruments, etc., etc. And then what she found was, ultimately they get some money, as alms, but not, they were begging. But they had the talent. And so what she did was she brought them together, created an orchestra, which now plays, in places like Kala Ghoda Festival.
Wow.
Or, they are invited for, maybe functions or weddings, etc., etc. So essentially what she did was a resource whose value was not getting realized in its setting. She took it to that place where the value got multiplied, multifold. And that's what the second principle of entrepreneurship is, that how does one take the resource from which are not being utilized, underutilized, to those surroundings where greater value can be realized. And that's how entrepreneurship creates value for the society. Workshop would be interactive. I'm planning some, exercises and where people can work together and work with themselves. One is to understand what the resource, when they seek in using one's resource, to understanding one's own resources. What are the resources as a person, I have? And most of us have many resources, we don't even think about it. We don't consider them as a resource. That resource may not be, maybe in terms of skill, which I take it as a hobby or something, but that is a resource. That skill may be something which is very useful for, or that resource may be even the network of people I have, so understanding that resource, and then how does one leverage that to cater. The other is to also identify, as I mentioned, that entrepreneurs identify a gap. So how does one identify a gap or an unmet need in one's own society, or in one's own community, or in one's neighborhood ecosystem, and how does one create a solution for that using the resources which I have?